All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We have one more session, and I am excited for this last one because it's going to be a great discussion. And so, buckle up. We've got a lot of great information coming at you. I do want to once again thank our event sponsor, 3M and First Case, for their collaboration. First Case for the nursing credits, and 3M for the sponsorship of this conference. Also wanted to direct everybody's attention to the bonus CE content that is located in the resources window. That is separate from this conference, but if you'd like to grab some extra CEs after the conference is over, feel free. That's 4 extra CEs on top of the 6 that we're delivering today. There's also some information on how to access your CE certificate. There is a downloadable form that gives you some real detail on how to get to that. So please feel free to pull that up. All right, let's get to it. Our next speaker, Jim Tyrrell, is sterile processing department manager at Silver Cross Hospital. In a career that has spanned over 2 decades, Jim has used process improvement strategies to constantly look for the best practices in his healthcare and sterile processing career. His department was awarded the 2015 SPD of the Year. Mary Beth Antone joined Silver Cross Hospital in 2003 and currently serves as Vice President of Clinical Operations at Silver Cross Hospital. Mary Beth currently holds administrative responsibility for SPD operations at the main hospital and the Silver Cross Freestanding Emergency and Outpatient Testing Center, the hospital's laboratory service and outreach, lab operations, sterile processing, and the procedural care unit. The presentation title, Surgery Starts Here, Communicating the Real Value of SPD. How can your sterile processing department move a directionless group of people with ineffective processes and a shortage of reprocess instruments to a team that collaborates and communicates with the operating room on a regular basis? What practices or tools are necessary to improve communication between both departments and within the SPD itself? Join us in learning how Silver Cross Hospital expanded the scope of their SPD responsibilities and how their team improved through an internal process improvement program. Let's celebrate their success and find out how they were able to elevate their SPD and build an effective team in this exciting final session. Let's welcome Jim and Mary Beth.
Brett, and yeah, welcome Jim and Mary Beth. And I guess as we get started here, you know, Brett gave a little bit of bio, but I'd like to kind of go behind the bio and try to find out a little bit more about what makes you tick. So let's maybe start with Jim. You know, what's the behind the scenes, like maybe what's the why for you, Jim, in, you know, sticking with sterile processing in a career over 2 decades? And then in particular, how did you end up there at Silver Cross?
Well, Hal, again, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate being on. First of all, sterile processing, like most of us, I had no clue what sterile processing was. Growing up, I went to college, got my bachelor's in college, did some voluntary work after that, after college. But again, really wanted to get into healthcare, but not into nursing. I knew, and I wasn't really looking for direct patient care, but I did want to use my business background. And lo and behold, I had this opportunity to work at a hospital back in town here in Chicago, and it happened to be sterile processing. Looked into it a little bit, ended up getting my certification even before I stepped foot into the sterile processing department at Prevena St. Joe's, which is here in Joliet, Illinois. And lo and behold, ended up getting my master's when I was at St. Joe's. Continued to work as a tech actually on afternoons. Did some other materials type work, part of the sterile processing department there. Ended up getting the manager position. And my story, I guess, continues. Silver Cross Hospital, which was across town, was building a new facility at that time. Was just starting to build that, and it really caught my eye. And so I was offered the position over here 2 years before we moved into our replacement hospital, and I thoroughly enjoyed everything I've done here, and it's gone gangbusters ever since.
I like your style. You look around town and say, hey, who's building a new hospital and who needs a new sterile processing manager for that new hospital? That's where I'm going.
That's right.
And then what about you, Mary Beth? Kind of what's your why and how did you end up there at Silver Cross?
Oh, okay. So again, just want to reiterate what Jim said. Thanks for having us. We're so happy to share our story. We're a little bit of a dynamic duo when it comes to working with the SPD folks to do the best we can for the hospital. I am a nurse by training. I've been in management for more years than I even care to admit. And as a part of the process in our new hospital, we moved like 3.5 miles down the road. We developed what is called the procedural care unit, which is a conglomeration of all those areas that provide procedural services such as surgery and endoscopy and PICU and the recovery areas and the interventional suite where we, cath lab and all that. So I actually acquired those departments because the gentleman that I worked with, who was the director of surgery at the time, I was the director of cardiology. We collaborated on the development of the PCU, and I knew that when we moved, he was just going to kind of get it all because, surgery is a big deal, and if you don't know surgery, how in the world could you manage it? And he left about a year before we moved. So they're like, hey, you want surgery? And I'm like, sure. It wasn't my favorite clinical rotation in nursing school, but I'm glad I did it because I learned a ton, and I will have to say that one of the most special things, and I kid you not, about acquiring the procedural space that included surgery was being introduced to what sterile processing does. As a nurse, there's people behind the scenes. There's foundational people who support what we do at the bedside. But I was at that time and continue to be in awe of what sterile processing professionals accomplish and how they help to keep our patients safe and infection-free. So, and an added plus, truly, I say this from the bottom of my heart, is working with Jim. He is awesome. He's very entrepreneurial. He's always looking for the next best thing. And it's just been a really good ride for me. And now in a new role now as VP, I get to support him from even a higher level where I can make, more decisions that can impact the department. So that's my why.
Awesome. Well, yeah, what's unique about y'all's story is I think in the whole conference, y'all are the earliest winner of the award that we're going to be talking to today. And so you kind of won the award before winning the award was like a big thing out there. Like you're really like one of the industry leaders in really setting the tone for, this thing is out there. Like that's how you plan and build the proposal, and that's how you highlight all your success and recognition. So it's really it's unique from that angle, but it's also going to be unique because I kind of want to find out through this conversation. It's been a while since you won the award, 7 or 8 years here, and I'm really interested to get to kind of that long-term impact and the confidence of the team, the recognition of the team, like where you have gone from here. But we'll save that to the end here, Jim. Let's start first, kind of go back in time first. You won the award, and as I've kind of described on a couple of the earlier sessions, you win the award the year after your submission, basically. So like you submit in early, like winter or spring, but you're actually submitting for the year previous. And so kind of walk us back to the year before. What was everything like? Like, what was the atmosphere, the dynamic? Like, what was going on? Give us a snapshot before the big push into that winning season.
Sure. So I had just really come on board here at Silver Cross. We were still in our old facility, which was the hospital was 115-year-old building. So many of a lot of our equipment was half working at the time. We had a lot of workarounds that the staff really just did. We when I came on board, there was no tray tracking system per se. A lot of handwritten notes. That's how they got things done. It was a little chaotic, honestly, and I think it's true to say that when I came on board, if I knew there wasn't a greener pasture of a new hospital down the road, I'm not sure I would have stayed. So it was a little chaotic. Again, staff are troopers, and they still are, like all SBDs. They get the work done, but a lot of workarounds and a lot of things like that happen. A lot of very inefficient. As I recall, again, this is a while back, but as I recall, a lot of inefficiencies. Equipment was broken most of the time, so we had to figure out how to get through and get things done any way we could.
It's interesting, Jim, that word chaos. This is not the first time that answer has come up today. And like, what was everything like before the award? And anyone listening in who is in an active sterile processing department today, they know what that feels like. Even after the award or during like the award-winning season, there's still some mornings or some days that are just chaotic, because that's what happens at perioperative services. You know, things go wrong, but we got the heroes in place who can get it fixed. And that resiliency that you mentioned, you know, with the staffing, I think is a big theme there. The most important thing is we're not going to give up on the process. We're not going to give up on the patient. And it's really unique, you know, to see in that setting, out of chaos, then has come champions. And we'll tell more of that story here in a bit. I should have mentioned, I guess, as we kick this off, so Mary Beth is on the phone with us. Those of y'all who are asking in the comment section, you're like, we can't see Mary Beth. Well, yeah, because, you know, she's just like when you watch the news and they have that little thing at the bottom that says like on the phone with a very important person. That's who Mary Beth is today, on the phone with a very important person. Speaking of very important people here, Mary Beth, I want to go.
I do want to say, can I just say really
yeah, go ahead.
Too?
Yeah, jump in.
Full disclosure, okay, so I'm actually on the road, on the interstate, and going to this little town in Iowa that I vacation in. It's my refuge. It's my little place where I go fishing and boating and just hanging out with family. So I always leave a little bit early on Friday. So I am so sorry it's distracting, but I just couldn't give it up, and I didn't want to give this up either. So I'm more than happy to participate by phone, and if you have questions, they're gonna send those questions to me just verbally, and I'm going to answer. I'm not an important person. I just happen to be on the road. Okay.
Well, yeah. So in this question, you kind of are, and it's an interesting setup, because you mentioned this just a second ago to Jim. In your new promotion, like one of the things you're most excited about as a VP is now you can support Jim at an even higher level. And what I'm going to ask you is, a big part of this story, even way back in 2015, was the theme of executive support. Can you talk through why that was such a big part of this award-winning season, and like how you developed those relationships in between sterile processing and your administrators?
Absolutely. So I will tell you, Silver Cross Hospital, we have a very unique culture. We are incredibly relational. It started in the old hospital. Jim mentioned the building was over 100 years old, located in a two-hospital town, separated facility by the Des Plaines River. The hospital that Jim used to work at, kind of in the more desirable part of town, and Silver Cross was on the east end that really kind of served a more underserved community. So getting really good talent into the organization was really important to us to help grow our services. So when we decided that we were going to move just 3.5 miles down the road to the east, which is farther away from the other hospital and closer to a more desirable service area, if you will, from a payer perspective. We knew we were going to build this shiny brand new hospital, and we had a lot of planning meetings about what that space would look like. Now, all this happened before I accepted responsibility for sterile processing. I'm the kind of leader that when I've got responsibility for something, I am going to do my best to advocate for those areas. And having been a nurse my entire career, understanding that what I would do at the bedside to help care for a patient or to assist the physician in caring for the patient, there's a whole army of people behind that sharp end, right? There's a whole army of people that help the caregivers deliver the care. And I was fascinated by sterile processing. I mean, and when I'm fascinated by something, I want to share it with the world. I want to say, can you believe that they do this, that, and the other thing? So I remember early on, and Jim, you could corroborate this, that didn't we bring case cards to a leadership meeting to show people when a doctor says they have a tray in surgery, you know, we all think of like the little tray that the dentist gets in the office, right? And I'm going, holy smokes, they've got these big cabinets. There's like 10, 12, 15, 20 trays per case, and somebody has to know what every single piece of instrumentation does and how to clean it. And oh, by the way, here's the process. So I was super excited. And when I accepted responsibility for surgery as an extension of surgery, I accepted responsibility for this circular custody, chain of custody, right? It's not like surgery is just a customer of SPD. SPD is a customer of surgery as well. It's a circular motion. So it was easy for me as the administrator over both surgery and SPD to say, okay, managers, get it together. You guys got to work together. You got to respect one another, and you got to make sure that your team members respect one another. So I, at that time, shared it up the chain with my VP, and I'm just that kind of a person where I when I get excited about something, I want everybody to know about it.
Yeah, that's an important insight there, Mary Beth, and I'll bring this back to Jim because I know this is a reality out there, but I think a lot of people forget that in our setting, in constructions, in renovations, in budgeting, it's a competitive space. Like, in one sense, we're competing for the same dollars that radiology is competing for, that pharmacy is competing for. Like, there's a budget. We're all getting out of the same budget, little slices of the pie. And it's extremely important in that competitive atmosphere that you have that executive support in the room advocating for you with the passion that Mary Beth was just talking about, who, like, she's going to own this. So in your experience, you know, through that whole process, how did you develop and, you know, maintain those relationships? Because I'm assuming that Mary Beth was not the only administrator that was on your side advocating for you. Like, how did you develop that?
Honestly, I'm big about teaching. I'm big about teaching what we do, and it usually includes show and tell. So Mary Beth, everyone, I'm big about come to the department and see what we do. Otherwise, it's out there. It's not their thing. So I'm real big on show and tell. Like Mary Beth said, I actually would bring trays to executive meetings. We bring anyone who wants to, and even more so, we're going to invite them to the department. It's kind of scary for them to get all suited up sometimes, to get their bunny suit on. But I was never shy about the show and tell and bringing them to our department and showing all our ills sometimes and what we do well. So that was always a big deal for me, and I enjoy showing what we do. So it gets me excited. So
yeah, that is one of the challenges because we are behind the red line. And just getting executives, getting administrators, like, you know, come in here and actually see the complexity. Just like Mary Beth was saying, like, you know, the assumption is these trays are like these little bitty boxes with a couple of instruments. Like, these can be like major units, hundreds of instruments, all those trays in one case card, a lot of complexity. It's not like they're all the same widget even. Like, there's all kinds of complexity that's built into that. And you can't really see, like we heard in our interviews with surgeons before, that they come down in sterile processing for the first time, and they're really shocked. Even surgeons having like used these instruments for years, they're shocked at the complexity of the workflow down in sterile processing. So I imagine on that administrative side as well, like there's a lot of those aha moments that then tie in to now I understand when Jim comes to my office and says, hey, we need a new cart washer, for instance, or we need a new ultrasonic, what exactly he's talking about and where in the workflow that's going to apply and impact. So great takeaways there. Yeah, Beyond Clean, a big part of our mission statement and focus in educating the industry is around three things: the people in the industry, the processes in the industry, and the products in the industry. So let's talk first in the context of your award, the impact that people play, the people in the department in taking your department to the next level. Jim, can you kind of give us some highlights about what this looked like back 2015 for you?
Well, people, the biggest thing too was don't necessarily need someone that's, I don't know what you say, brilliant. You need somebody that's dedicated. So we're always looking for somebody that, my first take is, number one, and they have to be a mover, a fast mover. So I'm looking for someone that, we talked about certification, not necessarily having to have the certification, but having started the certification in SPD is a big deal for me, because that shows they're gonna be dedicated to what we do. So that's number one. So I'm looking for somebody that is gonna be dedicated to our craft and willing to learn more about the craft. And granted, I'll be happy to teach them, but they have to show that willingness and the interest in our world, because it takes dedication, because there's days when it's tough, both physically and mentally, to do what we do. As far as people, oh, go ahead.
So you mentioned that they have to be movers. Like, do you make them run like a 40-yard dash and then time them when they come in?
You know, I've always said the first thing I do when I get somebody for an interview is I will walk them from wherever I pick them up to the department. And honestly, if they can't keep up with me, that's the first sign.
Oh, that's part of the interview. Okay, yeah. So that's an important point.
Secret's out, because sometimes it's not just the verbal; it's the physical in our world. So that's actually part of my interview. Believe it or not, it's the nonverbal. Anyway.
Yeah. So what other aspects, like outside of that, that dedication, the ability, obviously, to keep up with the physical aspect, like what else kind of set, in particular, you know, this team back in 2015, like what was special about the people part of it?
Again, we had, and it comes to the culture of our Silver Cross Hospital, the dedication to our people to overcome, even in not in the greatest of times, is unparalleled here at Silver Cross. We always were the hospital that could, even if we didn't have everything in place. So it's just, it's hard to kind of quantify, but it's that the whole adage that we can get this done, we can do this.
So Mary Beth, at the level of like that administrative support again, and looking at training and culture from the leaders, right? Because you've got a lot of folks who report to you within the hospital setting. What do you look for in the culture of the leadership? And in 2015, again, you know, looking back, like how did your leaders in place in that time in the operating room, in sterile processing, how did that culture impact the ability to build this award-winning season?
Well, I can tell you, you know, as a leader myself, I would never ask my team, a member of my team, to do something that I wouldn't do myself, unless I was incapable, obviously. So, you know, the kind of leaders that I like on my team are people that are willing to jump right in if they have to. And particularly in the OR and in SPD at that time, I had those leaders that would advocate for their staff by actually working alongside their staff if need be. And, Jim in particular is someone he loves to teach. Like he said, he takes a great amount of pride in the work that sterile processing does, and he emulates that for the staff. At that time, I think, Jim, we had some folks who had been with us for decades. And we, those are the lifers, the ones that know what they do is important. Other newer folks to the department, they would take cues from Jim. This is a great career to have. You are important to what happens to those patients upstairs in surgery. And I think what Jim and I did successfully to make the team feel good is we tried to share their story outside of the department. I reported to the COO at the time. I can't tell you how many times I asked her to go down there with me just to say hi. If doctors would come to my office and have a comment, whether it be a complaint or a compliment about sterile processing, hey, you want to take a walk downstairs and see what they do? Other leaders in the hospital, and there's always this rub with OB that they're too busy to bring down their trays, so somebody from SPD can come upstairs and get it. It's like, no, your people are working hard, my people are working hard, so we can share this responsibility. So Jim is a leader of SPD. He's always really kind of been on the cutting edge of things. He's always looking for new and innovative ways to do things, to partner with vendors in the industry. We can be a beta site for something new. He's just really creative that way, and I think that infuses energy into his staff. And just the thought of applying for this award, it was overwhelming to everybody. We're like, really? Do you think we can do this? And I can remember Jim just saying, well, why not? Why not? All we can do is try and let's see. So it paid off, because I'm telling you, the pride of this team when they won. I mean, my COO said we're having a luncheon for them. I'm going to be there. Everybody got something really nice in appreciation. It was just a way to elevate and kind of let other people know how important this department is, because like you said, you're behind the red line, you're out of sight, out of mind. You're just kind of, oh, that's what they do, right? So that's it.
Yeah, you're right. It just takes one member of that team to have the vision, right? Like Jim had to say, hey, we can do this. And let me kind of cast that vision. And then everybody else, slowly starts getting on board. And then it becomes everybody's vision. But somebody has to have it first, Jim. So that's a great story that you're just like, yeah, you know what? I think we could do this. And let's have this conversation about, the practical steps it's going to take to put the proposal and that submission together. If we have time here at the end, we can kind of talk about that a little bit. I do want to ask, though, as we transition out of this people category, one last question on surprises. Was there anything surprising in regards to your team as you built toward this industry accomplished? Does anything kind of stand out, or anybody stand out where you're like, yeah, I did not expect this person to get with the program, or I did not expect, this team to kind of come along as they did? Anything you want to shout out on that?
Sure. It goes both ways. When you're dealing with change, there are surprises just on how people react. The people you think are going to be your biggest advocates and are going to jump in and be the ones aren't always the ones. So, and we did find that through our lean process that it wasn't always the person that you're going to think. And that sometimes it's that quiet one that never says anything that all of a sudden is the one that's jumping on the process and really carrying you forward. And so, yeah, we had some of them, and it was really neat to see those individuals jump in the light and really take great strides forward and carried some of our new processes forward. It was really neat.
It is really surprising sometimes, but encouraging as a leader to see that it's the vision, like it's just the right vision, the right opportunity that catches those people's imagination, like you said, the quiet ones. And for years they've just been coming in, doing their job, and then it's that little spark of, oh, like now that gets me excited, and then they become the internal cheerleader that gets everybody else on that kind of um, the unofficial leadership level, right? Because there's always those cultural leaders that don't have the titles, but everybody's like looking toward, like, so what does Miss Shirley think about this? Because I know what Jim's saying, but if Miss Shirley gets excited, then I'll get excited. So like you got to get those people on board early on to make that thing happen. So that's great. Let's talk processes. One of the big takeaways that we want to get in this conference is like the practical things that your team did that took you up to that level. And I'd love if you could share, Jim, a couple of those, concrete examples of the things that you changed and the improvements that you made that really made this happen for your team in 2015.
Sure. First of all, and I give Silver Cross the foresight in this one, they actually at that point hired an internal lean process team, and there was a whole department involved, and they actually installed one lean process engineer into sterile processing to help me with change, and
Wow.
that just catapulted our department forward, which was awesome. So again, we had the new hospital coming on board soon, and the hospital again invested in. They were actually they were Toyota engineers that actually were involved in our department. So that just our change and positive change just went into rapid hyperspeed, with their help. So that was first and foremost. And I think that actually was one of the reasons too that catapulted us for this award, because our change happened so rapidly, and it went so well. I made a quick list because it's been a while, and we've made a lot of changes since. But a quick
Right.
list. Some of the things we did: we reorganized our trays, we standardized our trays, we took tray sheets out of our trays, set up that whole process. We removed unnecessary equipment rounding throughout the hospital. We had staff going all over the hospital all the time, and now we had made them more centralized, kept them in the department, kept their specialized training actually within sterile processing for often then, rather than having them doing all the equipment running within the hospital. We were taking on robotic surgery at that point, which was brand new, coming onto the new hospital. We again had to prepare for that, which again was a big undertaking, and we did that with great success, both equipment and staffing wise. I started to round with the OR daily and their huddles, which we had never done before, and that greatly improved all of our positive communication between departments. We began hosting educational seminars in the twice a year. At that point, we were doing them. We had 60 to 90 attendees that we were hosting, SPD staff, which was awesome, because that just helped everything in a positive light. I'm trying to think. Let's see, we changed our case picking times. At one point, we were picking cases at 7 a.m. the day before cases, and we had a ton of rework and everything. And we, with the help of our engineers, they helped us decide on a appropriate time, and we would test different times and would see how much rework we're doing, and we came up on a ideal time then for the department, which was a big deal at that point. And again, many other small lean projects we had done, probably a list of 50 to 70 small lean, whether it be moving something that was closer to staff. There was all kinds of that we did.
Yeah, I know you said that was kind of a short list, but I'm thinking through all the things that have to happen to just accomplish one of those things on the list, like you kind of threw out there, standardized trays. Oh my goodness, that's a massive
Right.
project that has all kinds of implications in the OR, communication, data, the physical inventory itself. I mean, huge. And then you just kept on going down the list again, and again. So I think that's very helpful, for folks tuning in, that it's not one change. It's not like you got, one project and that solved all of the chaos that you kind of mentioned before. It requires um, that hard look at every process across the department that is causing any kind of waste, any kind of inefficiency, any kind of frustration or quality um, issue, and then drilling down to the bottom of that process, then building it back up again in a way that's most effective. So I really appreciate you sharing the list. Like I said, now I want to maybe throw a question over to Mary Beth here, and then maybe get your insight too, Jim, after that, on the challenges. So like you talked about all the changes that have made or that were made that kind of brought you up to the next level. But Mary Beth, do you remember any particular challenges or lessons learned along the way in this, kind of 2014, 2015 season that you can speak to in the midst of improvement, and then still confronting those challenges?
Yeah, one thing I thought of as Jim was kind of like taking us down memory lane of all the improvements was that when we were in the old hospital and we were in this tiny little department, we had in our minds that when we moved into our brand new facility, that things were going to be better because we were in a new facility and a new space, and obviously, how could it not be better than where we were? And I will tell you, I think Jim would be shaking his head if I could see him up and down right now, that the day we moved in, we knew that the department was too small. But it's not just the space, it's the processes. It's how you continually evaluate what you're doing and how you're doing it and making it fit into the box in which you've been given. And if the box needs to be bigger, that you have to, and I hate to use the word fight for it, but you mentioned this earlier, that there's a lot of competing priorities in the hospital for resources, not only, financial resources, but space resources, that you have to make a case for it. And what I think was a huge gift to Jim was being partnered with a lean engineer, and a lean engineer from Toyota. So zero healthcare experience, but the concepts remain the same in terms of process improvement. And just the ability for Jim to be able to think outside the box on, okay, yeah, I went from X square foot to, X plus square foot, but the process still doesn't work. How can I make it better? And to be able to pick the brains about the flow. Our flow in the new department was really kind of out of whack in terms of going from decontam through processing and assembly and then into the sterilizers. We would bring carts out of the sterilizer into a space just immediately adjacent, so it wasn't a safe way to park those trays that had been sterilized. But Jim came up with ways to have the flow be visual so that people would know that this section is before the sterilizer and this section is after the sterilizer. And then over time, continually said, we have to come up with a better way to do this, and that will require more space. And we've been in our new hospital now for just over 10 years. We've had double-digit growth in our procedural areas up on the procedural care unit, but we've also increased our number of C-sections. Jim has been seen as the subject matter expert for scope processing across all departments, for instrumentation in the wound care center. How do we help the inpatient nursing units with the instrumentation that they currently have on the units? It's just a constant improvement, and you have to have a leader who can think, kind of almost have a preoccupation with failure. What could go wrong, and I want to catch it before it goes wrong. So it didn't
Mm.
stop after 2000. It's continual, absolutely continual.
Well, preoccupation with failure. That's a phrase I'm going to walk away with because it is, Jim, right? Like if you're preoccupied with identifying all of those areas that have failed or could fail, that is how you improve. Am I right?
Correct. Correct.
Are there any challenges that stand out to you? Like I think that story about the new space, a lot of folks can identify with. Like we've all kind of gone through that. If you've gone through the renovation or new construction, and you're thinking, "Hey, it's gonna look new, it's gonna be new, it's gonna be shiny." Like how could anything here be wrong or broken? And then you're like, "Ah, yeah, but we're bringing our broken processes with us, or we're bringing our broken culture with us, and that's going to come back and bite us in the butt." But is there anything else that kind of stood out that maybe wasn't an unexpected challenge or a challenge that you knew going in that you still have to overcome?
I know whenever you're making change, the biggest problem, and I'm always amazed, is to try to sustain it. Is It's a continual effort, and often I'm amazed. I guess it's with the whole failure idea that you think you got something great, you put it all in place, and then no more than a month later, you're like, oh my gosh, it doesn't look anything like what we just did. So again, that whole thought of uh, you have to continually stay on things, and you have to hardwire it, and sometimes even the hardwiring doesn't do it. So you just have to continually round and check in on all the new processes and make sure things are still good and the outcomes you still want. So
Commitment to rounding, like you kind of mentioned. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to add one thing, and that is, I think some of the hardest change was changing the mindset of the staff in the ED that we are partners, and that takes a lot of work because folks in the operating room, and pardon my French, but we know shit rolls downhill, right? So the surgeon, gets all over the OR staff about something that didn't go right. Yeah, exactly. Something didn't go right, and they get mad at the OR staff, and then the OR staff blames SPD. So I think changing the mindset that we're not going to throw one another under the bus. That it may very well be that there was bioburden on an instrument, but it could be because the OR staff didn't send down the instrument after had been sprayed with enzymatic like they're supposed to, right? So instead of pointing fingers, us versus them, to have there be a mindset that we're all in this together. I think that change is something that is not just a one-time thing. It's a continual evolving process as we move through a different way of thinking about it. I mean, some of the new folks that come into both of the space, SPD and the OR, can be influenced by people who have been in the business for a long time who share that mindset to kind of break that chain, to say, it's always going to be a challenge to recognize that we're all in this together. It's not an us versus them type thing.
Yeah, that idea on a concrete, practical kind of takeaway here has implications for who you decide is going to be a preceptor in your department. It's not just the people that have the technical skills, they know the process, they know the policies, and they can teach. It's also that cultural piece that you mentioned, Mary Beth, of, yeah, but are they on board with the change? Are they going to be cultivating this new person coming in line with their vision? Are they going to be planting that kind of toxic mentality of, yeah, but you're going to hate it here, they're going to treat you like trash, like everybody, like just all the drama that if it's real or if it's not real, there's a way to approach the challenges that is proactive instead of kind of that negative that can be passed on from preceptor to trainee again and again and again. And you don't really know where it's coming from or how this new person, Jim, like did terrific in the interview. And you're so excited. They're coming in. It's going to be awesome. And then like 3 months later, just like you said, you look back and you're like, well, that was not the way that I intended that to turn out. What happened? Well, it could be that kind of broken preceptor um, in in just the cultural piece. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. That's kind of my perspective on the matter.
That is very true, and also it comes from the top down. So Mary Beth, the structure in our PCU, which is the Procedural Care Unit, the structure begins with Mary Beth and she treats everyone as equals. And that culture of we're all in this together is portrayed from her down, and that's been an awesome thing, and that's why that continues on today. It really helps the whole situation.
Aw, that's so nice. Thanks, Jim.
I know y'all
Can I
been.
add one? Let me add one.
Yeah. Sure. Is it a compliment for Jim? If it's a compliment for Jim, then no, you cannot add it anymore. Go ahead.
No, one other piece about that is we all know that sometimes SPD is a stepping stone for people to get into OR teching, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's hard to know that when you hire somebody and they're in school to become a surgical tech, or they're maybe a surgical in school and then ultimately want to be a nurse, that we don't want to invest in them. But Jim has always been very open-minded. We've had people come from our local community college that are learning how to be SPD techs. They come on board, they express an interest in being an OR tech, and if they ultimately make it up the chain and get into the OR to be an OR tech after having been an SPD tech, we expect them to be ambassadors for SPD. We expect them to remember where they came from and to support their former fellow employees, staff members, if there is, that trash talk and drama upstairs. And I will tell you, our robotic coordinator that has been in that position for years, she started as an SPD tech. She went to school to become an RN, and now she's in a leadership position as a robotic coordinator. And she will keep people in check on that. It's like, I know what it's like to be down there. And yes, sometimes the concerns are valid, and other times you really just kind of be a little bit more forgiving. So Jim's open-mindedness to allowing people to use SPD to get to a different level within the organization is also what I think makes him a good leader.
Yeah, Jim, I'm going to let you speak to that because I, too, am a huge advocate of that model of hiring and leadership that's not, kind of the selfish model of, hey, I only want to hire people that are going to stay with me forever and never, ever leave and always be in this one role that I hired them in because I don't want to train anybody else and I don't want turnover. Like, that's a very, small vision for what leadership is. And I'm really curious, that impact of being open-minded the way that Mary Beth has described, I feel like it would allow you to even get the kinds of candidates that even if you're going to keep them for a short amount of time, they're really, really bought in because now they see their career path, their progression, right, and they want to soak it all up. Has that been your experience, and kind of what other impacts has that had on your team?
Actually, it's been huge for us, actually. That is our, nowadays it's harder. It's very hard to get staff, and that's countrywide. But our biggest pool now is our internships that we get that are SPD techs that are coming through we'll hire them on into SPD first, knowing we'll probably only have them for a year or two because they'll finish their surgical tech program, but that's okay. I mean, then we have several now advocates in the OR right now. Currently, there's probably 5 to 10 that were previous SPD people that are now in the OR. Wow. Well, guess what? That's all right because now we have advocates for that relationship between the OR and SPD, and it's usually a positive one. And that'll help us all in the end.
Yeah, we got some comments here in the Q&A from Rebecca, who loves it when people move through multiple positions like that, and and the impact that has just creating a more well-rounded individual. I think we completely agree with that comment. So thanks, Rebecca, for making that. I want to go back to that rounding conversation, though, real quick, Jim, because as a sterile processing manager and director myself, I think yeah, that was probably one of my weaker skill sets, just because, like, even though right now I kind of talk for a living, podcasting, education, everything else, I'm not a fan of just kind of strolling up and starting a conversation from scratch with people. And I feel like that's kind of what rounding was. But then I had like some responsibility on my shoulders too, because it's like rounding with purpose and like trying to get deeper into those conversations, build those relationships. How would you maybe like encourage folks like me who are just not naturally fond of that kind of social situation? Like, why is it so valuable to the impact that your team had in in everything that we've been talking about here today?
First of all, you and I are alike. We're and you're more in front of the camera now than I even like to be. I think sterile processing by nature, we tend to be in the background, and we kind of like that. So when we get out in front of people, it's not normally what we like. So we feel uncomfortable. But it's awesome for me to do that, and it's been such a positive relationship builder. Because I'm an advocate for SBD, and if I'm in front of the OR staff every day, they then can see the positive vibes that, hey, we're looking for the same goals. So they can see that then every day, because I'm with them every morning at 6:50, bright and shine, and we kind of I give them a snapshot of what our day is looking like, what they need to help us with, what we need to help them with, and it works well. So it's been awesome. When I know I start my day that way, it definitely helps the relationship building for both departments. And individually, then I can see faces, and the names and faces aren't just a telephone call. Actually, we can build the relationships, and it sure helps.
So we've got a few minutes left here, and I do want to talk here briefly about the impact that products have had in this success story. I've said it every session, but if you imagine a department with no products, it's a pretty empty space. We can't do our job without the kinds of products and solutions that we need. And without naming names, right? So like no product names or anything, but were there any kinds of products or equipment that you can kind of point to and say, hey, that really had an impact in this season of improvement in allowing our team to get to where we wanted to go with this goal?
Well, I have multiples, of course, and my big thing is collaboration with these vendors is a big deal for us. We really want to work in depth with them, because they have products that we make our lives better. And if I can get the details on it without all the extra fluff, I love it. So, again, collaborating, we created a loaner tray tracking program. Physically, the vendor, which I can't mention, which I'd love to, but he spent time here in our decontam developing the product together with me. And that was awesome. It was awesome to do that. And again, he asked me every day, so what do you need? How can we make this work? And we created it together, and now it's a national loaner program. And so we did that, 6 years ago or 7 years ago together. Tray tracking program, our tray tracking program, we've worked constantly with them to try to make things better from the get-go. As I said, when I walked in the old Silver Cross building, we had a limited tray tracking program that they hardly ever used. And now we have a full scanning tray tracking program, and we're always looking for more and more from it every day. We're always looking to try the next best thing for tray tracking. Our turnover trays that we use, we helped, again, we were the beta site for that program. way back when we 7 years ago, 8 years ago, was huge for us to get the turnover that we needed to help our OR and our patients to be safe and successful, efficient wise, was a big deal for our department. And that's just 3. I know I'm working with another one right now. I went on a site visit yesterday for another one. I'm big on site visits to find the latest and greatest. Well, I think I got another one. So I'm working on that. I'm working on
Still
that.
in it.
Yep, I'm working on that, and we'll have that up and going, I'm sure, within a month now with this next that has to do with turning or tray, doing trays without having to wrap every tray is my plan. So that's the next latest and greatest that I'm working on.
Earlier Mary Beth mentioned that you're a fan of beta sites, like very innovative leader, and obviously that shows, through that. I think it's an important insight too into the kinds of collaboration that you mentioned that can take departments quickly into the future. They can improve processes very quickly if you're willing to be that kind of beta site, to open your team up and be collaborative, to work together to build solutions. That's what, like, a lot of folks don't realize. You can have a tremendous impact on the entire tree, like solutions that are available, just by being willing to pull in one of those vendors and say, hey, I'll tell you what you need to know about the challenges. If you'll help me help you to build a solution that's going to fit not only for our problems, but for everybody else out there in this space. So I think that's terrific insight there. And if anybody wants to know, not only like to what Jim said, but anybody else on the sessions, like who the vendors were who actually helped them, it is in the HPN write-up, so you could go check that out through the magazine, and you can actually read, who it is that Jim's working with and working through for those solutions. We got a couple minutes left here, so I kind of want to wrap up with a final question to both you and Mary Beth, and I'll throw it to Mary Beth first. After the award, and it's been a number of years, as we kind of said at the beginning, you all won it, way back in 2015 now. What has been the long-term impact on yourself, on the department and the facility in getting to the front page of this national magazine and really spotlighting all the terrific work and accomplishments that your sterile processing team accomplished back then? Like, what has been the long-term impact?
For me, I was so proud to be a part of the team that made this happen, although I was more of a cheerleader than anything else. But just the awareness organizational wide of what sterile processing brings to the table, and how, we're a high reliability organization. We've been on a safety journey for a number of years, and, patient safety, who has more impact on patient safety than the people who sterilize the instrumentation that we use to prevent surgical site infections? I mean, really, the pride of being a part of that team, and for the rest of the hospital to know it's not as simple as you think it is. And there's a national recognition. Our hospital is big on demonstrating to the rest of the world that we know what we're doing. And when you can be validated by an outside source of expertise that, you really have what it takes, it's such an element of pride. And I think the long-term effect of all of it has been great recruitment tool, great retention tool for those people who were there at the time that are still with us, to say, I want to work in a department for an organization that recognizes excellence.
That's awesome. Jim, what about you? What's been a long-term impact?
Honestly, success breeds success. So once we got this ball rolling, it just never ends. And we can turn back to this 2015 award. It's kind of the springboard for that. But again, success breeds success, and everyone wants to be part of a winner. So that definitely helps the whole process, and it just keeps rolling.
I'll tell you both, in 2015, you probably never would have dreamed that 7 years later, you're going to be given a global presentation about the award, still talking about all the best practices and all the lessons learned along the way. So I think you're right, Jim. Success just continues to roll forward for those teams that are committed to doing that. And I want to thank you both, for being so open with the challenges, with the lessons learned, with the culture created here in this Silver Cross story. So yeah, thank you for your time and for sharing today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, and we're going to turn it back over to Brett to wrap us up today.
All right. Thanks, Hank. Thanks, Jim and Mary Beth. That was a great way to end the day. And Jim, you couldn't have said it any better. Success breeds success. And so we do appreciate your efforts at Silver Cross. It's a great story. And congratulations on your award. Even though it's back in 2015, it's obviously still making an impact. Throughout the day today, there were a number of different topics, number of great conversations and things that really stood out. And for me, there is, some bullet points that I'll probably throw out here right now, but some of the predominant themes: education, teamwork, integrity, collaboration, empowerment, support and interaction, buy-in and accountability from leadership in the hospitals. And I think overall it's a team effort across the board. And so we do appreciate everything that everybody today brought to the table. Such a wonderful day. I know that we're going to be utilizing a lot of this material and content. We're going to burn it down into some podcasts, re-release it, and also it's going to be available on demand at the close of today's session. So I want to once again thank our sponsor 3M and our event collaborator First Case for the nursing credits. I want to thank all of you today for joining us. It's been a special day, one of a kind day, especially when we're looking ahead towards Sterile Processing Week next week. So this is a great way to kick off that week and recognize everything that sterile processing professionals do for our industry and for, above all, our patients. Downloadable resources are up on the right-hand side of your screen, so please go ahead and access those. There's some good information from our event sponsor, 3M. There's also some information on how to access the CE certificate guide. But after this is concluded, you will be automatically directed to the conference survey page to receive your CE certificate. So if you've stuck with us all day, CEs are right around the corner. The sessions, like I said earlier, are now available on demand. And I want to just once again extend my sincere appreciation to all of our professionals out there for fighting dirty each and every day. We certainly appreciate you. And we really enjoy speaking with you and working with you on a daily basis. So thank you for all you do. We'll be seeing you once again next time. Thanks again.